Hey everyone, Gill here. Today I recorded the next episode of Monday Match Analysis Classics with Steve Flink. We'll be going over the 2013 French Open Semifinal between Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic. But I also thought that you'd be interested to hear Steve's thoughts on the events of the past week. So I made sure to do that here. All right, we're welcoming in Steve Flink, the Hall of Fame tennis writer of tennis.com and author of the book, The Greatest Tennis Matches of All Time. Also, look out for a Pete Sampras book coming up soon. But we wanted to talk about the recent events that's happened in tennis this week. Of course, the U.S. Open is looming large in late August, with a couple of warm-up tournaments before then. But this week, I think it's fair to say the entire tennis world suffered a bit of a setback at the Adria Tour with many of the players, Borna Coric, Novak Djokovic, Grigor Dimitrov, all testing positive for COVID-19. So, Steve, I'm wondering what your takeaways from this were. Does it have anything to do with the U.S. Open, or was this something that is just kind of an isolated case of not taking the proper care?
Probably more the latter, Gill. I feel I have some sympathy for Novak Djokovic in a way that not many people seem to, in that he talked to the Serbian authorities. You can't just do this. It's not all of your own doing. You've got to get some approval guidelines to what they'll accept. But then I think he and the other players, I think that what they underestimated was people are coming from all over the world. I mean, I'm told that Dimitrov had been in Florida at one stage. They haven't all been hanging out in Serbia and quarantining in Serbia for 2 weeks. I mean, some of them have been in Serbia. Others are coming from other countries. So they just took too much solace from feeling like the numbers for the virus were very low, infection rate very low in Serbia, and therefore they could pack the stands. The players could come out like normal times. And then you saw Djokovic and the others hugging each other after matches, going to discos in the evening. And I think that was a real mistake for everybody to do that, not just for Novak Djokovic. He's catching all the flack because he organized these. I think his intentions were really quite honorable to put on the tennis, and everybody had been pent up and they loved but I think it really should have been done very differently, with much more sparse crowds, and players definitely not hugging after matches, almost saluting each other, literally keeping some social distance. And then there's no way they should have been in the discos in the evening in those close quarters, or playing. There was that picture, I think, of Dimitrov guarding Djokovic on the basketball court with his arm. Yes. None of that makes any sense. So I don't think they were cocky. I just think they were not realistic about how that virus can travel, and that if you bring people into Serbia, that there's just dangers, and you have to always, there needed to be more caution from everybody. And I think they've all learned. And Dominic Thiem has since spoken out in the last day or so and said that they got too euphoric, is the word he used. And I get it. They were excited. They were going to be back out on the court. This was going to be fun, but it should have been handled in a different way. Now, Gil, to your point, just to quickly add to that, to your point about the U.S. Open, I'm sure it concerns the U.S. Open authorities. Now, their argument will be, and it's a good one, but we have very different measures. None of that's going to exist here. And we are going to discourage the players from handshakes. And we are going to keep them in different, maybe they're going to use some of those suites for locker rooms. We're going to keep them socially distancing. And we're not going to put them side by side in cars. And we're going to do this and we're going to do that. I think their measures appear to be excellent. Whether it's enough, I think the biggest problem is going to be the players flying in. I don't know if they get tested before they land in New York, but then what? They get on site, or they get to the hotel and they get that first test in, or they play a couple of days and suddenly one of the players tests positive again and it starts spreading. I think it's going to be a real challenge to complete that tournament. I admire the USTA for trying, but even with the strong measures, I think keeping it under control will be no simple matter. Do you agree?
I do agree. I think that players are going to test positive, and I think that's a starting point, a safe assumption to make.
Yeah.
The hope is that, unlike at the Adria Tour where the players didn't distance, if one player tests positive, it's going to be okay. It's not going to put the tournament in jeopardy.
Right.
That's the major difference. I think you make a good and important point about responsibility, because I also have some sympathy for Djokovic, who is taking most of the heat here. How many people around Novak Djokovic failed him in this situation?
Right, right.
No one around him, including the Serbian government. Everyone gave him the okay, and someone really should have stopped him.
Yeah,
And
and frankly, he's not an unreasonable guy. And I think
yeah,
had they made the case, Novak, let's sit down and talk about this. This is great that we're going to have these events, but here's what I think we need to do to ensure your safety and the safety of the other players and the health. I honestly think he would have been open to some of these suggestions. We'll never know, but I believe he would have. But I think when everybody just kept giving him the green light, then that also gave him and the other players a false sense of security.
now, recently, a lot of the news has actually surrounded Djokovic's father, and I gotta say, in my personal opinion, I really don't put much weight into what he has to say. I care more about what Djokovic has to say. With that being said, it is fairly admonishable that that Djokovic's father has tried to kind of place all the blame on Grigor Dimitrov. That doesn't seem right.
No, I agree with that. I agree with that. I think it's in a and maybe it's an understandable emotional reaction from a father who feels that his son is being put under the microscope and has been given all this sharp criticism. And in his mind, it's maybe feels a little bit like you and I do, that, it's a shared responsibility. But I don't think he had to pin the blame on, I don't, and you don't know. He doesn't know for sure. That nobody really knows that it was Dimitrov who spread this. But I do think it will be a lesson, Gill, well learned by all of them, whether it's Team or Novak himself or Dimitrov or Victor Troitsky or any of them, that they have to be very careful now going forward. And they have to realize that this is a pandemic. It's called a pandemic for a reason, and that they have to treat it accordingly and not think that because the rates of infection are low in that country, that means you're out of the woods.
Agreed. I was initially disappointed that I didn't think Djokovic took responsibility for the errors of the tournament, but he quickly corrected it in an updated statement that he put on his social media platform. So I was glad to see, after initially he didn't quite take full responsibility, that he ultimately did.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think he understood when he had a chance to reflect on it. He now knows, and they're obviously postponing these other events. They're not trying to just barrel through and say, "Oh, we'll fix it, we'll play, we'll be fine." For now, they're not going to do it, which is very wise. But it's going to be fascinating, Gil, to just see where this leads as we get closer to the Open, and who decides to play, and who doesn't want to come at all, and then again, does it get out of control if a couple get the virus? Does it, how badly does it spread? But I think you're right. I think if they keep these measures in place and they keep this distancing, they could keep it from getting too prevalent among the players in the draw in the men's and women's games.
Steve, thanks as always for your perspective. It's always appreciated.
Thank you, Gil. I enjoyed it.